I've been making videos now for a couple of years, and a question which often comes up in the commentaries is what is my experience and what do I know about the French market? Usually by the people who aren't too keen on me, but there you go. Well, basically I thought I'd do a quick video. I'm not a great one for self-promotion, so to speak, but the question's been asked enough that I think it merits a video these days. For those who don't know, I'm called Dan Newton. I am the president of agenceNEWTON. I actually moved to France in 1986 with my parents. My father was a painter and mum was a writer, and that was their master plan.
It's a cunning plan, actually. Of course it is.
I was taking a year out after my O-levels, had a place to go to art school. During that year, a magazine came out in the UK called Family Wealth and Investment, and in their first edition they did an article about a lady who had moved down to the Dordogne, lived there 6 months and was thinking about selling up and moving back because none of the locals spoke English, and she went to church and it was all in French, and her English newspapers turned up 3-4 days late, and so on and so on. Mum, being a writer come journalist, wrote back to the magazine and basically said, well, probably the best place for that lady would be back in England. We personally have actually bought a small cottage in a little village in the countryside of Brittany. Yes, we make the effort to speak French, even if it is beginner level. And literally, we couldn't walk down our village street without being invited in for an aperitif or something. And anyhow, the editor turned up on our door and wanted to do a full-blown article about us. And anyhow, so he did all the lifestyle questions and why Brittany. I won't go into that question because that would be a pretty hard video on its own. At the end of the interview, he says, do you mind if I ask a couple of commercial questions? One of which being, have you thought about doing anything to help other people get houses in France? And no, that wasn't the start of agenceNEWTON. Basically, me and my dad looked at each other. My father answered saying, well, put it this way, we have 2 friends that we actually helped get a cottage over here. Remember, in those days, in late 80s, central Brittany, you could get a small cottage for £5,000, so hardly big business. Anyhow, so helped the 2 friends, and he said, well, we'd be liars if we said we'd never actually thought about making a business out of it, but it'd be very much late night conversations which last about 5 minutes. Next thing we know, 427 letters turn up. Please tell us more about your services and the sorts of properties you have to offer. At that stage, we had no services, we had no properties. We were just sitting down, like opening letters like mad things. So anyhow, obviously the idea starts to build together. My parents decided to go and see our local notary, Maître Geoffroy, who became a very good friend. Sort of said, how can we do this? And the notary explained to us, you don't just become estate agents in France like you do in the UK, but let's see what we can do. So we went round and saw all the governing bodies from the Chambre de Métier, Chambre de Commerce, Chambre de Notaire, and finally going down to what we call the Greffe du Tribunal, which is the criminal company's house. And we started asking them the question, and they literally said, stop, we've heard the story, it's been passed down the pipeline. We're going to say to you what we've said, all the others have said to you, you don't become an estate agent just like that in France. But we can see you're making every inroad to start up an honest business, so give us a few days and we'll get back to you. A few days later, the Greffe rings us back and said, don't forget this is actually a government-run body. We found a way for you to work. It's not completely legal, but it's not illegal either. We found the grey area in the law for you. And this is how the actual, let's say, infamous intermediary between foreigners and notaries was started up. Actually started up for my parents by the Greffe du Tribunal of Morbihan. That was 86. We then carried on doing that till 1996, when my parents actually decided to call it a day, and as it happens, also the actual French state decided to actually cancel out the status of intermediaries between foreign buyers and notaries, because literally a lot of English people jumped on the bandwagon and weren't necessarily declaring themselves. Anyhow, I found myself on the job market. The French are great ones in diplomas over here, and I had no diplomas, but I had my English O-levels. So falling back onto my past experience, real estate, I started sending up my CV for different job appointments where they said back +3, beginners accepted. I said to them, well, I haven't got the back +3 because I studied in England, but I've got 10 years experience, blah, blah, blah. Most of them weren't interested because I didn't have the back +3, which is pretty stupid if you ask me, because the back +3 is what now allows someone to actually get their own real estate license. So they want to take you on to employ you so you can learn how to be your own boss.
You are nuts, no way.
Moving on. Finally got myself a job with a French agent. That was back in 1997. Did a few years there in Bow. That didn't go too well, unfortunately, with the boss being not the straightest of person, let's say. Then after that, partnered up with another French estate agent to open an agency called Brittany Immobilier. I was actually the office manager, he was the boss. After a few years, actually in 2006, I had to get my own licence and I bought the boss out. Unfortunately, 2008, the big crunch followed on just behind there, so I actually closed that agency down by choice. And then after that, I sat down, took some time out, thought things through, and set up agenceNEWTON in 2009. Then in 2014, I was contacted by Sheila Gorham, who is now my business partner, and we set up agenceNEWTON as you know it. So to resume things, I came over in 86, started pretty well straight away selling houses in Brittany, and then in 2006 got my own licence. 2009 started agenceNEWTON. 2014 reformed agenceNEWTON as it is these days, and well, let's say the rest is history. So there you have it, 35 odd years in French real estate. So I hope that answers the question.